Notre Dame, they woke up this morning finally needing a head coach for the first time in over a decade. And you got Luke Fickell's name out there. You got Marcus Freeman's name out there. I'm a little confused about the whole situation, to be honest with you. So what happened today is obviously Brian Kelly's going to LSU. So you've got an opening. Jack Swarbrick was down in Texas. They were doing the playoff meetings. He's the AD at Notre Dame. And he said, we are not going to name an interim head coach, which just baffles me. But Jack Swarbrick's not an idiot. So I know there's got to be good reason behind what he's doing. At least I think there has to be. Here's the way my simple mind's working. I don't get what the risk is in naming Marcus Freeman your interim head coach. Marcus Freeman's going to get a head coaching job somewhere in the next few weeks, if not sooner than that. The only thing I could come up with, the only thing I kind of bounced this off a few people, the only thing that they agreed that we could come up with is maybe they know something we don't know, or maybe they have not gotten assurances from Marcus Freeman that he's going to stay at Notre Dame because Brian Kelly wants him in Baton Rouge. And so if they have an inkling that he's not going to stay here, no, then absolutely not. You do not name him your interim. Because the only thing worse than Brian Kelly choosing LSU over you would be you naming an interim head coach and then him also choosing LSU over you. Yeah, that'll look bad. I get that. So absent of me not having all the information, I'm just going to say it confuses me from the outside as to why they're not going to name an interim head coach. But here's what's going to be fun right now. And it's such a pressure cooker of a situation to be in because they could go after Luke Fickell. A lot of reports indicate that's who they want. Luke Fickell comes in. Cincinnati's first call is probably going to be Marcus Freeman. You want to come be our head coach? By the way, we are Cincinnati going to the Big 12, so we're also going to be what you would call a Power 5 job. Do you want the job? Then you could have the guy Notre Dame could have had, and you could have the guy that you wanted over Marcus Freeman, and they both get head coaching jobs at the same time, kind of switch addresses, basically. Keep an eye on that. Matt Campbell's name has been conspicuously quiet over the last week. And I got to tell you, I had a coaching buddy say, did you watch Campbell's last game at Iowa State today? And I said, what do you mean? He said, go watch him. And I looked at him on the field pregame and in his press conference postgame. He did sound like a guy who was on his way out the door. I don't know what that means, if it meant anything at all, but let's just keep an eye on Matt Campbell. What about Oklahoma? Because this is one that for all of you who think I just endorse every hire, I'm not totally sold on Brent Venables going to Oklahoma, but a lot of Oklahoma fans are. It's your program. It's not my program. I think very highly of the Oklahoma job. And so when I had someone texted me, looks like it's Venables. And now overwhelmingly, that's the reporting. It looks like it's Brent Venables, who is the defensive coordinator at Clemson, for those unfamiliar. I look at that and I think to myself, Brent Venables, good candidate. But then the next thing out of my mouth is, I think Oklahoma could do better. Now, their criteria may be different than mine, for all I know. Here's what's interesting, though. There's a little shift going on that you didn't think was going to happen. You look at Big 12 football just 3 or 4 years ago, and you looked at the trajectory of the overall sport, and it was offense, offense, offense. Even Alabama, Nick Saban had shifted gears, and they were all about adapting new offensive approaches. And you probably thought to yourself, the Big 12 is never going to hire another defensive coach out here as a head coach. Well, Dave Aranda is about to play for a Big 12 championship Saturday. And also Brent Venables at what I would call right now the premier program in the Big 12 for the time being in Oklahoma is maybe about to get hired as one of the premier defensive coordinators over the last several years in college football. And it coincides with the style shift out there. It's been happening for a couple of years, but now you see it's kind of the same way with the playoff, and everyone thinks it's just going to be the same 4 teams forever. No. And it's the same way with style of play. It's not just going to be the same forever. Everyone's evolving. Everyone's changing consistently and constantly. And so if Brent Venables gets that, I don't think it'll be the last high-profile defensive coordinator to get his name into consideration for one of these big jobs, which we were being told, again, just 3 or 4 years ago wasn't going to happen. I would strongly encourage you to keep an eye on the Twitter account at Late Kick Josh. Like, this stuff changes so frequently, and we get updates. I mean, I'll get texts at 3 a.m. from folks. I was talking to a coach at a G5 level school today, and he was talking about just with the coaching moves that he knows of, how much stuff's going on at the assistant coaching level because of this, and then tie it all into early signing day coming up, which is the last thing I wanted to touch on here. There was a lot of gnashing of teeth when the early signing day got instituted. Not at 24/7 Sports. We love it. It gives us a second signing day. It's a huge tentpole event. The more and more I look at the ramifications around here, the more I realize we really should shift that early signing day to August, because a lot of what's happening right now is predicated on getting a coach in place for the early signing day. And I'm telling you, there's no easy way to do it. There's no good way to do it. If we were to scrap the college football calendar today and just start from scratch, we would never construct it like it is. We would never put the early signing day right after conference championship games as you're preparing for your bowl games. You're in the thick of the transfer portal season. So much is going on. You're trying to hire coaches, fire coaches. You're trying to prepare for games. No one would ever construct it like that. That early signing date, I'm all for it. But man, I wish we could move that thing to August. And I can assure you, it's not selfish, because our show's doing record numbers right now. But for the betterment of the game, you talk about why this is not good for the game. I agree. The early signing date can stay. Coaches on the move can stay. The transfer portal can stay. It's just you got to space that stuff out a little bit more on the calendar. And that's, believe it or not, that's what a majority of coaches have talked to me about over the last week or so. It's not even that the moves are happening. It's always good. It's always good to shift the pieces around in the coaching industry. It's the timing. That's the big issue that a lot of these folks have.